Welcome to No Longer Conformed. I'm Erik Garthe, and we are in class with Joseph. Lessons in God's Plan. In this session, we'll be looking at Genesis chapter 47, verses 1 to 31, the servant heart in God's plan. Let me tell you about the layout of our home when we lived in North Carolina. When I was in seminary, because of the size of our family, we lived in an individual home rather than in one of the student dormitories or the student housing. And our home was the former dean of the college before it became a seminary. And this home was designed for service, was designed for entertainment. The kitchen door, when it was closed, there was an entrance from the kitchen to the dining room that went through two rooms. One of them was a service staging area, and those serving were unseen until they entered the dining room. There was also a door that closed the hallway to the kitchen, the bedrooms upstairs, and the side room and half bath. Only the living room and the dining room were exposed to guests. That house was designed to serve and entertain. Servants were unseen unless they were serving. And this is important for Christians to learn. The minister for Jesus Christ must possess a sincere servant's heart. And there are three qualities of a servant's heart: humility, loyalty, and gratefulness. Those three. And we can see these three qualities displayed in chapters 47 and 48 of Genesis. And remember, the question a few sessions ago: why did God let it happen to Joseph? Well, perspective helps when there's distance, because distance makes it clearer. First of all, why did God let it happen to Joseph? To train him to be a leader. Second, to save his family from starvation. Third, to build a nation of Israel. Fourth, to provide salvation for all mankind. Joseph was an instrument in God's sovereign plan, and there were many side events. Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers. Joseph sent to prison on false charges. The cupbearer's dream interpreted by Joseph. Famine in the land. The testing of his brother's sincerity. The land of Goshen given to Joseph's family. Now, let's take a moment and consider these three qualities of a servant of Jesus Christ. First, the humility of a servant's heart. Look at verses 1 through 12 of chapter 47. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all they possess have come from the land of Canaan. And indeed, they are in the land of Goshen." And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to dwell in the land, because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen." And then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. And then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread, according to the number in their families. Humility was demonstrated by Joseph's respect for Pharaoh. The family was already invited to live in Egypt. The land of Goshen was already given to Jacob's family. So why this special visit with the king? Well, Joseph gave honor to his authority, always aware of his source of power. Joseph understood royal court procedures. Although the family was given the land, family representatives had to formally request permission to live in Goshen, and Pharaoh had to then grant it. But Joseph decided it in chapter 45, verses 10 to 11. Jacob settled there in chapter 46, verses 28 and 29. But it must be Pharaoh's own decision. Humility was demonstrated by Joseph's respect for his brothers. They identified themselves as shepherds, despised in Egypt. They expressed gratefulness in coming to Egypt. They requested permission to live in Goshen. Here in verses 2 through 6. Joseph was not ashamed of his family, always aware of where he came from, the son of a shepherd. Humility was demonstrated by Joseph's respect for Jacob. What's interesting is that Jacob blessed Pharaoh, the lesser blessing the greater. So we see the humility of a servant's heart. Second, we see the loyalty of a servant's heart. Look at verse 13. Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they brought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed. And then Joseph said, give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock, if the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, we will not hide from my lord that our money is gone. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. It shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones. So they said, you saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. Loyalty was demonstrated by Joseph's responsibility. Notice God's providence there in chapter 13, verse 13. There was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. Man's power is futile when the blessing of God is removed. No one can stand. The land was unfruitful. The people's wealth and freedom were useless without food. Responsibility means doing the difficult and often painful tasks. Joseph took literally everything for Pharaoh. All the money of the people, all the livestock in the land, all the land itself, all the people except the priests. Joseph made everyone sharecroppers. 1/5 or 20% of all produce to Pharaoh. Tribute was paid on all increase. The priests were exempt. All positions bear responsibility. Some are very painful to fulfill. And notice God's special care for his anointed servant Jacob. There's a blessing for being obedient to God. Look at verses 27 down to verse 31. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. And then he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. Jacob lived without suffering need in the land of Goshen. Jacob enjoyed fellowship with Joseph for the next 17 years. Jacob would be buried back in the promised land, and Joseph swore to it. We'll look at that third point, gratefulness, next time as we consider Genesis chapter 48. In the meanwhile, you have a great day.